They say blood is thicker than water, but I learned the hard way that money can make even your own son forget your face. Hi everyone, and before we dive into this story that changed my entire life, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because betrayal, it turns out, speaks the same language no matter what corner of the world you're in. 3 months ago, I thought I was the luckiest mother alive. I had raised my son Danny from nothing, worked 2 jobs to put him through college, and watched him grow into what I believed was a decent man. I was wrong. Dead wrong. And when I discovered just how wrong I was, I did something that would either destroy our family forever or teach them the most expensive lesson of their lives. But this story isn't just about revenge, it's about what happens when the people you love most become strangers wearing familiar faces. If you've ever been betrayed by family, if you've ever felt invisible in your own life, then please, hit that subscribe button now, because what I'm about to tell you will shake you to your core. Trust me, you'll want to remember where you heard this. My name is Beverly, though most people call me Bev. I'm 72 years old, and I've lived enough life to know that the worst betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. Danny was my miracle baby. I had him when I was 23, fresh out of a marriage that ended when his father decided that responsibility wasn't for him. From the moment Danny took his first breath, it was just him and me against the world. I worked at the local diner during the day and cleaned office buildings at night, sometimes bringing Danny with me in his carrier because I couldn't afford a babysitter. I remember those early years like they happened yesterday. Danny would fall asleep to the sound of vacuum cleaners and wake up to the smell of coffee and bacon grease. He never complained, never asked for things we couldn't afford. When other kids had the latest toys, Danny made do with cardboard boxes and his imagination. When they went to Disney World, we went to the free museum downtown. But we were happy. God, we were so happy. I saved every penny I could. While other women my age were buying new clothes or going out for dinner, I was putting money away for Danny's future. I wanted him to have choices I never had. I wanted him to go to college, to become something more than a woman who smelled like cleaning supplies and grease. The sacrifice was worth it when Danny graduated high school with honors. I'll never forget sitting in that auditorium, tears streaming down my face as they called his name. He was the first person in our family to even finish high school, let alone with academic awards. When he hugged me that night, he whispered, "Mom, I'm going to make you proud. I'm going to pay you back for everything." And he did make me proud. Danny got a full scholarship to State University, studied business, and graduated summa cum laude. He landed a job at a marketing firm right after graduation, making more money in his first year than I had ever seen in my entire life. He moved into a nice apartment, bought his first car with cash, and started talking about buying a house. But somewhere along the way, something changed. It wasn't sudden, it was gradual, like watching a photograph fade in sunlight. The phone calls became shorter. The visits became less frequent. When I'd ask about his life, his answers became vague, distracted. "I'm busy, Mom. Work is crazy. I'll call you soon." Soon became next week. Next week became next month. Before I knew it, we were talking maybe once every 6 weeks, and even then, it felt like he was checking off a duty rather than wanting to connect with his mother. I told myself it was normal. He was building his career, finding his place in the world. I had raised him to be independent, and independence meant not needing his mother for every little thing. I convinced myself that this distance was actually a sign of my success as a parent. Then, about 2 years ago, Danny called with news that made my heart skip. He was dating someone. Her name was Cassandra, Cassie for short, and according to Danny, she was amazing. Smart, beautiful, ambitious. She worked in real estate and came from a good family. They had been together for 6 months, and Danny thought I would really like her. I was thrilled. My son was happy, he was in love, and maybe, just maybe, this would bring him back into my life. Maybe I would get to be a grandmother someday. Maybe we could be a real family again. The first red flag should have been when Danny kept postponing our meeting. Every time we planned for him to bring Cassie over for dinner, something came up. Work emergency. Cassie wasn't feeling well. They had other plans they had forgotten about. It went on for months. When I finally met Cassandra Williams, I understood why Danny had been hesitant. She was everything I wasn't. Tall where I was short. Polished where I was rough around the edges. Educated where I was street smart. And she looked at me like I was something she had stepped in. But I tried. God knows I tried. I cooked Danny's favorite meal, pot roast with mashed potatoes and green beans, the same meal I had made for his birthday every year since he was 5. I cleaned my small apartment until it sparkled. I even bought a new dress, the first one I had purchased in 3 years. Cassie picked at her food and made polite conversation, but I could see the judgment in her eyes. She took in my furniture, most of it second-hand, some of it older than Danny himself. She noticed the water stain on the ceiling from the upstairs neighbor's leak that the landlord still hadn't fixed. She saw my hands, weathered from decades of hard work, and I watched her unconsciously hide her own perfectly manicured fingers. After dinner, while I was cleaning dishes, I overheard her talking to Danny in the living room. Her voice was low, but the apartment walls were thin. "She's sweet, Danny, but do you think, I mean, when we start having events and meeting my parents, do you think she'll be comfortable?" Danny's response was too quiet for me to hear, but I didn't need to. I understood perfectly what she was asking, and I understood that my son didn't defend me the way I had defended him his entire life. That was 18 months ago. Since then, I've seen Danny maybe a dozen times, and Cassie maybe half that. They were always busy, always had somewhere else to be. When they did visit, it felt like they were doing me a favor, like they were checking an obligation off their list. But I kept trying. I sent Cassie birthday cards and holiday gifts. I remembered her favorite flowers, white roses, and had them delivered to her office for no reason other than wanting her to know I was thinking of her. I wanted to be the mother-in-law she deserved, even if she didn't seem to want a mother-in-law at all. 3 months ago, everything changed. Danny called me on a Tuesday evening, his voice bubbling with excitement I hadn't heard since he graduated college. "Mom, I have news. Big news." My heart leaped. "What is it, sweetheart?" "Cassie and I are engaged. I proposed last weekend, and she said yes." I started crying before I could stop myself. Not just because my son was happy, but because this meant I might finally, truly be part of his life again. There would be wedding planning, family dinners, holidays together. Maybe grandchildren someday. "Oh, Danny, that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you both. When's the wedding? Where are you thinking of having it? I know it's been a while since I helped plan a party, but I'd love to." "Mom, slow down." He was laughing, but there was something in his voice I couldn't identify. "We haven't figured out all the details yet. But don't worry, you'll be one of the first to know everything." One of the first to know. Not the first. One of the first. I should have paid more attention to that phrase. I should have recognized it for what it was, a warning wrapped in a promise. But I was too happy, too hopeful, too desperate to be part of something good in my son's life. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into being the perfect future mother-in-law. I researched wedding venues, collected magazine clippings of dress styles I thought Cassie might like, and even started a small savings account specifically for wedding expenses. I wanted to contribute, to be useful, to show them that even though I didn't have much, I had enough heart to make up for what I lacked in resources. But every time I called to ask about the wedding plans, I got vague answers. They were still figuring things out. They were taking their time to make sure everything was perfect. They didn't want to rush into anything. I respected their process. After all, weddings were expensive, complicated affairs. I understood that they wanted everything to be just right. I told myself that when they were ready to include me, they would. What I didn't understand was that they already had included everyone they wanted to include. And I wasn't on that list. The first hint that something was wrong came from my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. She's lived in the apartment next to mine for 15 years, and we've developed the kind of friendship that exists between people who've shared thin walls and thinner budgets for too long. Mrs. Patterson has a daughter about Danny's age, Jennifer, who works as a photographer for the local newspaper. She covers everything from high school graduations to city council meetings, but she also does freelance work for weddings and social events. It was a Thursday morning in early March when Mrs. Patterson knocked on my door, holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing the expression of someone who has bad news to deliver but doesn't know how to start. "Bev, honey, can we sit down for a minute?" Something in her voice made my stomach drop. I let her in, and we sat at my small kitchen table, the same table where Danny had done his homework for 12 years. Jennifer was working an event last weekend, Mrs. Patterson began carefully, at the Riverside Country Club. "You know, that fancy place across town?" I nodded. though I had never been to the Riverside Country Club. It was the kind of place that required memberships I couldn't afford and clothes I didn't own. Well, she was photographing this engagement party. Really elaborate affair. Must have cost more than I make in 6 months. And Bev. She paused, looking at me with such sympathy that I knew whatever came next would hurt. She saw Danny there. With Cassie. My first thought was confusion rather than pain. An engagement party? But they just got engaged a few weeks ago. They said they were taking their time planning. Honey, it was their engagement party. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually felt my breath leave my lungs. Their engagement party, I repeated slowly, trying to make sense of it. But Danny didn't mention. I mean, he would have told me if they were having a party, right? Maybe Jennifer was mistaken. Maybe it was someone else's party and they just happened to be there. Mrs. Patterson reached across the table and took my hand. Jennifer showed me the pictures she took. Professional ones. Danny and Cassie cutting a cake, making toasts, posing with what looked like both sets of parents. She squeezed my fingers gently. There were about 60 people there, Bev. It was definitely their party. I sat in silence for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. The coffee grew cold in my hands as I tried to process what this meant. My son had thrown an engagement party, a formal, expensive celebration of his love, and hadn't invited me. Hadn't even told me about it. Maybe. I started, then stopped. Maybe what? Maybe they forgot. Maybe the invitation got lost in the mail. Maybe there was some reasonable explanation for why a mother wouldn't be invited to her son's engagement party. There wasn't. And we both knew it. Mrs. Patterson stayed with me for another hour, not saying much, just being present while I absorbed this new reality. After she left, I sat in my quiet apartment and tried to understand what I had done wrong. Had I been too pushy about the wedding planning? Had I said something to offend Cassie? Had I somehow misread the entire relationship between my son and myself? That evening, I called Danny. My hands were shaking as I dialed his number, but I forced my voice to sound casual, normal. Hi, sweetheart. How was your weekend? Oh, you know, the usual. Cassie and I went to dinner Saturday night, did some shopping Sunday. Nothing too exciting. He lied to me. My son, who had never been able to successfully lie about taking cookies from the jar when he was 7, lied to me about having an engagement party. With 60 guests. At a country club. That sounds nice, I managed. The weather's been beautiful lately. Perfect for outdoor events. Yeah, it has been pretty nice. I gave him every opportunity to tell me the truth, to include me, to acknowledge that I existed in his life in some meaningful way. He didn't take any of them. After I hung up, I did something I hadn't done since Danny's father left 35 years earlier. I poured myself a glass of wine and cried until I had no tears left. But crying didn't solve anything. It never had. So I did what I had always done when life knocked me down. I got back up and tried to figure out what to do next. Over the next few days, I found myself analyzing every interaction I'd had with Danny and Cassie, looking for clues I had missed. The way Cassie's eyes would glaze over when I talked about Danny's childhood. The way Danny would steer conversations away from family topics when she was around. The way they always seemed to be in a hurry to leave whenever they visited. I had been so focused on trying to be the mother and mother-in-law they wanted that I hadn't noticed they didn't want me to be anything at all. The realization should have made me angry, but instead it made me desperate. If I was losing my son, I needed to understand why. I needed to know what I could change, what I could fix, what I could do differently to earn my place back in his life. So I started paying closer attention. I listened more carefully to the few conversations we had. I noticed that Danny never mentioned future plans that included me. When he talked about holidays, he talked about traditions Cassie and I want to start. When he mentioned possibly buying a bigger house, he talked about having space for when Cassie's family visits. Never my family. Never me. Like I wasn't part of the equation at all. The second hint came 3 weeks after Mrs. Patterson's revelation. I was at the grocery store, standing in the checkout line, when I heard a familiar laugh behind me. I turned around, and there was Cassie, talking on her phone while examining a magazine rack. I know, right? The catering alone was $12,000, but it was so worth it. Danny's boss was so impressed, and you know how important first impressions are. She picked up a bridal magazine and flipped through it absently. No, we haven't set a date yet. We're thinking maybe next spring, but definitely something intimate. Just close family and friends, you know? Maybe 40 or 50 people maximum. 40 or 50 people. Intimate. Close family. I stood there, not moving even though the cashier was ready for me, listening to my future daughter-in-law plan a wedding that apparently had no room for the woman who had raised the groom. When Cassie finally noticed me, her face went through a series of micro-expressions: surprise, discomfort, something that might have been guilt, and finally, a bright, fake smile. Beverly. What a coincidence. I was just running some errands. She held up the bridal magazine like it was evidence of something innocent. You know how it is. I do indeed, I said, though I was beginning to understand that I didn't know anything at all. We made awkward small talk for a few minutes. The weather, the grocery store's new layout, Danny's job. Normal, surface-level conversation between two people who were supposed to become family but felt like strangers making conversation at a bus stop. As I drove home, I couldn't stop thinking about that phrase, intimate, close family and friends. I wondered who they considered close family. I wondered if I had somehow been reclassified from mother to distant relative without anyone bothering to tell me. That night, I did something I'm not proud of. I looked up the Riverside Country Club's website and found their event calendar. Sure enough, there was a listing for a private engagement celebration from 3 weeks earlier. The Williams-Morrison celebration. Morrison. Danny's last name was Morrison. But somehow, the party was the Williams-Morrison celebration, with her name first. Like she was the star of the show and he was just a supporting character. Or like her family was hosting and his family wasn't involved at all. I stared at that listing for a long time, trying to understand when I had become someone my own son was ashamed of. When had I gone from being the woman who sacrificed everything for his future to being an embarrassment he needed to hide from his new life? The worst part wasn't just that they had excluded me. The worst part was that Danny was lying about it, pretending it hadn't happened, treating me like I was too stupid or too unimportant to find out the truth. I had raised him to be better than that. I had raised him to be honest, kind, and loyal to the people who loved him. Somewhere along the way, either I had failed as a mother, or he had forgotten everything I had taught him. Either way, it was becoming clear that the son I thought I knew might not exist anymore. And if that was true, then I needed to figure out who this new Danny was and what he wanted from me. More importantly, I needed to figure out what I was willing to give him. The third piece of the puzzle came from the most unexpected source: my late husband's sister, Aunt Ruth. Now, I know I mentioned earlier that Danny's father left when Danny was young, and that's true. But when Danny was 12, I remarried a wonderful man named Robert Morrison, who legally adopted Danny and gave him his last name. Robert died 5 years ago from a heart attack, sudden and devastating. He left behind a modest inheritance, about $150,000 from his life insurance and retirement savings. I was his beneficiary, but Robert had always talked about wanting to help Danny buy his first house someday. So I made a decision that felt right at the time. I would save that money specifically for Danny's future. I never told Danny about the inheritance. Robert and I had agreed that we didn't want Danny to feel like he was waiting for anyone to die, or that he should count on money that wasn't his. We wanted him to build his own life, make his own way. The inheritance would be a surprise, a gift when the time was right. After Robert died, I invested the money conservatively and watched it grow. By now, it was worth close to $180,000. I had planned to give it to Danny when he got married, as a wedding gift to help him and Cassie start their lives together. But Aunt Ruth, who had stayed in touch with me over the years, had a different perspective on things. Ruth called me on a Wednesday evening in late March, about a week after my encounter with Cassie at the grocery store. Ruth was in her 80s, sharp as a tack, and had never been one to sugarcoat anything. "Beverly, I need to ask you something, and I want you to tell me the truth." "Of course, Ruth. What is it? Are you planning to give Danny Roberts' inheritance?" The question caught me off guard. Well, yes. Eventually. When he gets married, I thought it would make a nice wedding gift. "And does Danny know about this money?" "No. Robert and I decided it was better to keep it quiet." There was a long pause. "Beverly, honey, I think you need to know something. Danny called me last month." My stomach clenched. Danny never called Ruth. They exchanged Christmas cards and birthday wishes, but that was about it. He was asking about Robert's finances. Specifically, he wanted to know if Robert had left any money when he died. The room started spinning. What did you tell him? I told him it wasn't my business to discuss Robert's financial affairs. But Beverly, he was persistent. He asked if I thought you might be hiding money from him. He said he was planning to start a family soon and could really use help with a house down payment. I couldn't speak. My son, the son I had raised to be honest and respectful, had been calling his late stepfather's relatives, asking about money he thought I might be keeping from him. There's more, Ruth continued, and I could hear the reluctance in her voice. He mentioned that his fiancée's family was concerned about his financial stability. He said something about needing to prove he could provide for their future children. The pieces were starting to fit together, but the picture they formed was ugly. Ruth, did he say anything else? He asked if I thought you would need the money for your old age, or if you might be willing to help him out now rather than later. I hung up the phone and sat in stunned silence. My son knew about the inheritance. Somehow, he had figured out that Robert had left money, and he was trying to determine how much and how to get his hands on it. But more than that, he was discussing our family's private financial business with his fiancée's family. He was letting them judge his worthiness as a husband based on what his mother might or might not give him. The next morning, I did something I probably should have done years earlier. I called the bank where I had the inheritance invested and asked for a complete account statement. I wanted to see exactly where things stood, down to the penny. The amount was $183,247.32. More than enough for a substantial house down payment. More than enough to impress Cass's family. More than enough to make Danny look like a good financial prospect. I sat staring at that number for a long time, thinking about what it represented. It wasn't just money, it was Robert's hard work, his sacrifices, his dreams for Danny's future. It was also my security, my peace of mind, my buffer against an uncertain old age. But most importantly, it was apparently the reason my son was still in contact with me at all. I started thinking back over recent conversations with Danny, listening to them with new ears. The way he always asked how I was feeling, if I needed anything, if I was taking care of myself. I had interpreted these as signs that he cared about me. Now I wondered if he was just making sure his inheritance was secure. The way he had perked up when I mentioned looking at smaller apartments to save money. The way he had quickly offered to help me find something more affordable in a nicer area. Was he worried about my well-being, or was he worried I might spend his inheritance on rent? The way he always seemed interested when I mentioned doctor's appointments or health concerns. Was he being a caring son, or was he calculating how much longer he might have to wait? I thought about the engagement party I hadn't been invited to, the wedding being planned without my input, the careful distance Cassie maintained from me. If Danny was only staying in touch with me for the money, then they didn't need to include me in their lives. They just needed to keep me happy enough to ensure the money would eventually flow in their direction. I was a bank account with a heartbeat. A walking ATM who happened to be related to the groom. The realization was devastating, but it also clarified something important. If money was the only thing keeping my son in my life, then I needed to understand exactly what that meant for our relationship. I called my lawyer, a kind man named Martin Hendricks who had helped Robert and me with our wills. I made an appointment to review my estate planning and to discuss some changes I was considering. Beverly, are you sure about this? Martin asked after I explained what I was thinking. This is a significant decision. Maybe you should take some time to think it over. I've been thinking about it my whole life, Martin. I just didn't realize it until now. Over the next week, I revised my will. The money that had been earmarked for Danny was redirected to several charities that had meant something to Robert, the local food bank, the literacy program at the library, and a scholarship fund at the community college. Danny would inherit my personal belongings and whatever small amount I had in my checking account when I died. But the big money, the money he was apparently counting on, would go to people who needed it more than a young man who was ashamed of his mother. I didn't tell Danny about the change immediately. I wanted to see how things played out. I wanted to understand the full scope of what our relationship had become. What I discovered was worse than I had imagined. Over the next few weeks, Danny's calls became more frequent. Not more personal, just more frequent. He would check in on my health, my finances, my living situation. He started bringing up the idea of me moving somewhere smaller, somewhere more manageable. He offered to help me sort through my belongings, to make sure I wasn't holding on to things I didn't need. He was preparing for my death. Or maybe he was preparing to help me die a little faster. The thought was so dark, so unlike the son I thought I knew, that I almost dismissed it. But then I remembered the engagement party, the lies, the careful distance he maintained between his real life and me. This wasn't the boy I had raised. This was a stranger who happened to share my DNA and my dead husband's name. And if he wanted to treat me like a stranger, then maybe it was time I started acting like one. The moment that shattered my heart into 1,000 pieces came on a sunny Tuesday afternoon in early April. I had been wrestling with my discoveries about Danny and the inheritance for weeks, trying to decide what to do with this knowledge. Part of me still hoped I was wrong, that there was some innocent explanation for everything that had happened. I was in my kitchen, making lunch and listening to the radio, when my phone rang. Danny's name appeared on the screen, and despite everything, my heart still lifted a little. Maybe today would be different. Maybe today he would include me in something. "Hi, sweetheart. How are you?" "I'm good, Mom. Actually, I'm calling with some exciting news." My pulse quickened. "What kind of news?" "Cassie and I have been talking, and we've decided we don't want to wait until next spring for the wedding. We found a venue that had a cancellation for this summer, and we're going to take it." "This summer? That's wonderful. Danny, when exactly?" "July 15th. I know it's short notice, but we're really excited to start our married life together." July 15th. 3 months away. That is short notice, but if that's what makes you both happy, then I'm thrilled for you. What can I do to help? I know planning a wedding in 3 months is going to be intense. There was a pause. "Actually, Mom, that's kind of why I'm calling. Cassie and I have been working with a wedding planner, and we've got most of the details sorted out. We're keeping it pretty small and simple." "How small?" I asked, though I was beginning to suspect I already knew the answer. "About 40 people. Just immediate family and our closest friends." Immediate family. I let that phrase hang in the air for a moment, waiting for him to clarify, to tell me what time to be there, what to wear, whether he needed me to bring anything. He didn't. "Danny," I said carefully, "when you say immediate family, you mean?" "Cass's parents, her sister and brother-in-law, their kids. My groomsmen. Cass's bridesmaids. People like that." "People like that. Not people like me. I see." My voice sounded strange, even to my own ears. "And where do I fit into this immediate family category?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Mom, here's the thing. Cassie and I have talked about this a lot, and we've decided we want the wedding to be really intimate. Just the people who are most involved in our daily lives, you know." No, I didn't know. I didn't know how a mother could not be considered immediate family at her son's wedding. I didn't know how the woman who had raised him, sacrificed for him, loved him unconditionally for 35 years could be excluded from the most important day of his life. "Danny, I'm your mother." "I know that, Mom. And you're important to me. But this is about what Cassie and I need for our special day. What Cassie and I need. Not what we all need as a family. What they need, and apparently what they needed was for me not to be there. Are you telling me I'm not invited to your wedding?" The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "Mom, it's not that you're not invited. It's just, this isn't really your kind of thing." My kind of thing. My son's wedding wasn't my kind of thing. What exactly is my kind of thing, Danny? You know what I mean. It's going to be really formal. Expensive. Cass's family is, they're used to a certain kind of event, and we don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. Anyone. He meant me. They didn't want me to feel uncomfortable, which was really code for they didn't want me to make them uncomfortable. I see. I was proud of how steady my voice sounded, even though my hands were shaking. So this wedding, this small, intimate wedding with immediate family only, when exactly is this happening? July 15th. Like I said. No, Danny. I mean when. What day of the week? It's a Saturday. Saturday afternoon. I felt something cold settle in my chest. This Saturday, Danny? As in, 3 days from now. Silence. Danny, is your wedding this Saturday? Mom. Answer me. Is your wedding this Saturday, July 15th? Yes. The word hit me like a physical blow. My son was getting married in 3 days, and he was calling to tell me about it like it was an afterthought. Like I was a distant acquaintance who might be mildly interested in the news. 3 days? Danny. You're calling me 3 days before your wedding to let me know it's happening. I know the timing is. No. My voice was sharper now, powered by a rage I didn't know I possessed. No, you don't get to talk about timing. You planned this wedding. You sent invitations. You hired caterers and photographers and a venue. You did all of that without telling me it was happening. This isn't about timing, Danny. This is about the fact that you don't want your mother at your wedding. Mom, please don't make this harder than it has to be. Harder than it has to be. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. For who, Danny? Harder for who? Because I can promise you, finding out 3 days before the fact that your son is getting married and you're not invited is already pretty fucking hard. I never swore in front of Danny. In 35 years, I had never said that word in his presence. But 35 years of being polite and understanding and accommodating had gotten me exactly nowhere. Mom. I'm not finished. I stood up, pacing around my small kitchen like a caged animal. Do you have any idea what you've just done? Do you have any concept of what this means? It means we're getting married, and we want it to be perfect. It means you're ashamed of me, Danny. It means you think I'm an embarrassment. It means you value Cass's opinion of me more than you value 35 years of unconditional love. That's not true. Then explain it to me. Explain how a mother gets excluded from her son's wedding. Explain how immediate family doesn't include the woman who gave birth to you. Cass's family is paying for everything. They're hosting it. They get to decide. Stop. I cut him off. Stop right there. Cass's family is paying for everything? What about Robert's inheritance, Danny? What about the money you've been asking your Aunt Ruth about? Dead silence. You thought I didn't know about that? You thought I wouldn't find out that you've been calling my dead husband's relatives, trying to figure out how much money I'm hiding from you? Mom, I can explain. No explanation needed, sweetheart. I understand perfectly. You want the money, but you don't want the mother. You want the inheritance, but you don't want the embarrassment of having me at your fancy wedding. It's not like that. Then tell me what it's like, Danny. Tell me exactly what it's like. I waited. I gave him every opportunity to fix this, to explain, to apologize, to invite me to his wedding even though it was 3 days away. I gave him the chance to choose me over his fear of what other people might think. He didn't take it. Mom, I think maybe we should talk about this after the wedding, when things calm down. After the wedding. After the most important day of his life had come and gone without me. Danny, I said quietly, there is no after the wedding for us. There's no conversation that's going to fix this. There's no explanation that's going to make this okay. Mom, please don't be dramatic. Dramatic. 35 years of sacrifice, and being hurt by his betrayal was dramatic. You're right, Danny. I'm being dramatic. Let me be practical instead. I took a deep breath, feeling something fundamental shift inside me. When is your wedding? Saturday at 2 o'clock. And you're not inviting me? Mom. Yes or no, Danny, are you inviting me to your wedding? A long pause. No. Thank you for your honesty. Now let me be honest with you. Don't call me after the wedding. Don't call me when you need money. Don't call me when you want someone to babysit your future children. Don't call me when Cass's family disappoints you and you remember that I'm the one who actually loves you. You've made your choice, Danny. Live with it. I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely set it down. I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by the same furniture where Danny had eaten thousands of meals, done homework, told me about his dreams, and I realized that none of it had meant anything to him. But here's what really broke me. 3 minutes later, my phone rang again. For just a moment, I thought it might be Danny, calling back to apologize, to fix things, to invite me to his wedding after all. It wasn't Danny. It was Cassie. Beverly. Her voice was tentative, almost nervous. Danny told me you two just talked, and I wanted to reach out. Did you now? I think there might have been some misunderstanding about the wedding situation. No misunderstanding, Cassie. It's very clear. I'm not invited to my son's wedding because I'm not your kind of people. It's not that at all. It's just that we're keeping things very small, very intimate. Intimate? Yes, Danny used that word too. Tell me, Cassie, how many people from your family will be at this intimate wedding? Well, my parents, obviously. And my sister Jennifer with her husband Mark and their 3 kids. My brother David is flying in from Seattle with his wife Sarah. My grandparents on my mother's side. My cousin Michelle, she's my maid of honor. And my dad's business partner Tom and his wife, because they're like family to us. I counted silently. That was 14 people just from her side. 14 people from your family. They're not all family. Tom and his wife are family friends. I understand. And from Danny's side. His college roommate Jake is the best man. And a few guys from work. But not his mother. Silence. Cassie, let me ask you something. If your mother was still alive, would she be invited to your wedding? Of course, but that's different. How is it different? My mother would. I mean, she would fit in. She would understand the expectations. There it was. The truth, finally spoken out loud. I see. And you don't think I would fit in? Beverly, it's not personal. It's not personal. I laughed, and I could hear the edge of hysteria in my own voice. My exclusion from my son's wedding is not personal. What I mean is, it's not about you specifically. It's about maintaining a certain atmosphere. A certain atmosphere. Without me in it. Look, Beverly, I'm calling because I want to make this right. What if we took you out to dinner next week? After we get back from our honeymoon? We could celebrate then, just the 3 of us. Just the 3 of us. After the wedding. After the honeymoon. After all the real celebrating was over. That's very generous of you, Cassie, but I think I'll pass. Beverly, please don't be like this. Danny loves you. We both do. This is just about one day. No, Cassie. This is about who I am in your lives. And apparently, I'm someone who gets dinner at Applebee's a week later while the real family gets the actual wedding. It doesn't have to be Applebee's. I hung up on her too. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I poured myself a very large glass of wine, sat down at my kitchen table, and planned my revenge. The morning after Danny's call, I woke up with the kind of clarity that comes after a storm. The hurt was still there, it would probably always be there, but underneath it was something else. Something harder and more focused. I had spent 35 years being the kind of mother who put her son's needs above her own. I had worked double shifts to pay for his college. I had gone without so he could have better. I had smiled and nodded and tried to fit into his new life even when it was clear I didn't belong there. And what had it gotten me? A 3-day notice that I wasn't welcome at the most important day of his life. But here's what Danny and Cassie didn't understand about me. You don't survive 35 years as a single mother, working multiple jobs and raising a child on your own, without learning how to be strategic. You don't build a life from nothing without developing a certain ruthlessness when necessary. They thought I was a sweet old lady who would be hurt but ultimately accepting of their decision. They thought I would cry a little, maybe guilt-trip them a bit, but eventually come around and be grateful for whatever scraps of affection they were willing to throw my way. They were wrong. I spent that Thursday morning making phone calls. The first was to Martin Hendricks, my lawyer. Martin, I need to make another change to my will. Today. Beverly, are you sure? Yesterday you seemed certain about the charitable donations. I'm still certain about that. But I need to add something. A specific provision about my personal belongings. I explained what I had in mind. Martin was quiet for a long time. Beverly, this is, well, it's legal, but it's also quite vindictive. Good. That's exactly what I'm going for. The second call was to my bank. I wanted to understand all of my options regarding the inheritance money. Could I move it? Could I change the beneficiaries? Could I donate it while I was still alive? The answer to all of these questions was yes. The third call was to my landlord. My lease was up for renewal in 2 months, and I had been planning to stay in the same apartment. But now I was reconsidering. Maybe it was time for a change of scenery. By Thursday evening, I had the skeleton of a plan. It wasn't just about the money, although the money was certainly part of it. It was about teaching Danny and Cassie that actions have consequences, that you can't treat people like garbage and expect them to be grateful for the privilege. But I needed more information before I could move forward. I needed to understand exactly what their financial situation was, what they were counting on, what would hurt them most. That's when I remembered something Danny had mentioned months earlier. He and Cassie were looking at houses, but they were waiting to make an offer until they had a larger down payment. They had found a place they loved, a 4-bedroom colonial in one of the nicer suburbs, but they needed at least $50,000 down to make the numbers work. I also remembered what Cassie had said at the grocery store about keeping the wedding intimate and affordable. But then I thought about the engagement party at the country club, the professional photographers, the elaborate celebration for 60 people. Something didn't add up. On Friday morning, I did something I'm not entirely proud of, but desperate times call for desperate measures. I called the Riverside Country Club and asked about hosting a small event. I pretended I was planning a retirement party for a friend and wanted to get pricing information. What I learned was illuminating. The minimum cost for any event at Riverside was $15,000. For 60 people with the full catering package, professional photography, and premium bar service, the cost would have been closer to $25,000. So much for keeping things affordable. I also learned something else interesting. The person I spoke with mentioned that the Williams-Morrison engagement party had been lovely, and that they were looking forward to hosting the wedding reception as well. Wedding reception. At Riverside Country Club. I called back and asked about pricing for wedding receptions. For 40 people, with the full package, they were looking at a minimum of $20,000. Probably closer to $30,000 with all the extras. So their small, intimate, affordable wedding was actually going to cost at least $50,000 when all was said and done. Where was that money coming from? Danny made good money, but not throw away $50,000 on one-day money. Cassie did well in real estate, but the market had been slow lately. The only logical answer was that Cassie's family was indeed paying for everything, which meant they had significant influence over every decision, including the guest list. It also meant that Danny had essentially sold his relationship with his mother for the price of a fancy wedding. But I still wasn't getting the whole picture. There was something else, something I was missing. That evening, Mrs. Patterson came over with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. She'd been worried about me since Wednesday, and I think she could tell I was planning something. "Bev, honey, what are you thinking? You've got that look in your eyes." "What look?" "The same look you had when Danny's teacher said he wasn't college material, and you marched down to that school and made them put him in honors classes." She was right. I did have that look. The look of a woman who had been pushed too far and was about to push back. I told Mrs. Patterson about the phone calls, about the wedding, about everything I'd discovered. She listened without interrupting, occasionally shaking her head or muttering under her breath. "Those ungrateful little shits," she said when I finished. "After everything you've done for that boy. The question is, what do I do about it? What do you want to do about it?" I thought about that for a long time. What did I want? I wanted Danny to realize what he was throwing away. I wanted him to understand that I wasn't just some embarrassing old woman he could discard when she became inconvenient. I wanted him to feel, just once, the kind of rejection and humiliation he was putting me through. But more than that, I wanted him to need me. Really need me. The way I had needed him for 35 years. "I want them to realize they made a mistake," I said finally. "And how are you going to make that happen?" I smiled for the first time in days. "I'm going to give them exactly what they asked for." Mrs. Patterson raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" "They want me out of their lives." "Fine. They want to pretend I don't exist." "Perfect. They want to exclude me from their family." "No problem." I refilled our wine glasses and settled back in my chair. "But here's the thing, Patty. They want all of that, but they also want Robert's inheritance. They want to cut me out of their lives while keeping my bank account in their future. They want to have their cake and eat it too." "And you're going to let them?" "Oh, hell no." Over the next few hours, Mrs. Patterson and I refined my plan. It was elegant in its simplicity, devastating in its execution, and absolutely justified given what they had done to me. The wedding was tomorrow. Danny and Cassie would have their perfect day with their perfect people in their perfect venue. They would dance and laugh and celebrate their love while I sat in my apartment, alone, watching TV and wondering how I had raised such a selfish, heartless son. But then, in about a week, when they got back from their honeymoon all glowing and happy, they were going to discover that actions have consequences. They were going to learn that you can't treat people like they're disposable and expect them to finance your dreams. They were going to find out exactly how much their perfect wedding had cost them. And I was going to enjoy every single second of it. Saturday, July 15th dawned bright and beautiful. Perfect wedding weather, as they say. I woke up early, made myself coffee, and sat on my small balcony watching the sunrise. Somewhere across town, my son was getting ready for the most important day of his life. Somewhere else, his bride was putting on her dress, having her hair done, surrounded by the people who loved and supported her. I wasn't part of any of it. But instead of wallowing in self-pity, I had work to do. My first call was to Martin Hendricks, even though it was Saturday morning. Martin, I'm sorry to bother you on the weekend, but I need those documents we discussed to be filed first thing Monday morning. Beverly, are you absolutely certain about this? Once these changes are made, they're going to be very difficult to undo. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. My second call was to the local florist. I ordered a beautiful arrangement of white roses, Cass's favorites, to be delivered to her at the hotel where she was getting ready. The card read, "Wishing you joy on your special day. May you get everything you deserve. Love, Beverly." Let them think about that for a while. But the real move, the one that would change everything, came at 11 a.m. I had been thinking about this moment for 2 days, ever since I'd learned about the true cost of their wedding. They were spending $50,000 on one day. Money they didn't have, money that was being fronted by Cass's family, money they would need to pay back somehow. And I knew exactly how they were planning to pay it back. At 11 a.m., I walked into my bank and requested a meeting with the investment advisor who handled Robert's inheritance account. "Mrs. Morrison, how can I help you today? I want to make a substantial charitable donation. Today." I had done my research. The food bank, the literacy program, and the community college scholarship fund were all legitimate 501(c)(3) organizations that could accept large donations. More importantly, once the money was donated, it was gone. Permanently. How much are we talking about, Mrs. Morrison? All of it. The entire account. I want it split 3 ways among these organizations, and I want the transfers to happen today. The advisor looked concerned. "Mrs. Morrison, that's a very large amount of money. Are you sure you want to do this all at once? Perhaps we could set up a schedule, donate smaller amounts over time." "No. Today. All of it." It took 3 hours to complete all the paperwork, verify the organizations, and process the transfers. By 2 p.m., exactly the time Danny and Cassie were saying their vows, Robert's entire inheritance was gone. $183,247.32, split evenly among 3 charities that would use it to feed hungry families, teach adults to read, and send disadvantaged kids to college. Robert would have approved. He had always believed in helping people who needed it, not people who felt entitled to it. As I walked out of the bank, I felt lighter than I had in months. Not just because of the money, but because of what it represented. I had taken control of my own life. I had stopped being a victim and started being an agent of my own destiny. But I wasn't done yet. That evening, around the time the reception would be winding down, I made one more call. To Danny's cell phone. He didn't answer, which was understandable. He was probably busy with wedding festivities. But I left a message. "Hi Danny, it's your mother. I just wanted to call and congratulate you and Cassie on your wedding day. I hope it was everything you dreamed it would be. I also wanted to let you know that I made a donation today in honor of your marriage. I gave Robert's inheritance, all $183,000 of it, to charity. I thought that was fitting, since you've clearly moved beyond needing anything from me. I'm sure Cass's family will be able to help you with whatever you need going forward. Have a wonderful honeymoon. Don't worry about calling when you get back. I'll be busy with my own new life. Love, Mom." I hung up and turned off my phone. Then I poured myself a glass of wine and watched the sunset from my balcony. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. But the peace didn't last long. At 10:47 p.m., someone started pounding on my door. Loud, frantic, desperate pounding that echoed through my small apartment. I knew who it was before I opened the door. Danny stood in my hallway, still wearing his wedding tuxedo, his hair disheveled, his face flushed with anger and panic. Behind him, also still in her wedding dress, was Cassie. Her perfect makeup was smeared, her carefully styled hair was coming undone, and she looked like she was about to cry. "Mom, what the hell did you do?" I opened the door wider and stepped back. "Come in. Though I have to say, I'm surprised to see you. Shouldn't you be celebrating with your intimate family and close friends?" Danny pushed past me into the apartment. "You can't donate that money. You can't just give away Robert's inheritance without talking to me first." "Actually, Danny, I can. It was my money to do with as I pleased. And it pleased me to give it to people who actually need it. We need it." Cass's voice was shrill with panic. "Do you have any idea what you've done? We were counting on that money." "Were you? That's interesting, because Danny told me just 3 days ago that this wedding was all about what you two needed for your special day. He didn't mention that what you needed was my money." Danny ran his hands through his hair, pacing around my small living room like a caged animal. "Mom, you don't understand. The house we want to buy, the down payment, we need that inheritance." "No, Danny. You need money for the down payment. You just assumed that money would come from me. Because you're my mother. Because that money was meant for me." I looked at my son who had excluded me from his wedding, who had lied to me about having an engagement party, who had called his stepfather's relatives trying to figure out how much money I was hiding from him, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The money was meant for my son, Danny. The son who would love me enough to invite me to his wedding. The son who would be proud to call me family. The son who wouldn't lie to me or hide important events from me. That son would have gotten that money. I am that son. No, you're not. You're a stranger who happens to share my DNA. You're someone who calls me 3 days before his wedding to let me know I'm not invited. You're someone who discusses my private financial business with his fiancé's family. You're someone who thinks his mother is an embarrassment. Cassie stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Beverly, please. We can fix this. We can have another ceremony. We can." "You can what, Cassie? Have another ceremony?" "Let me guess. This time I'd be invited to the real ceremony, the one that counts? Or maybe you'd have a fake ceremony just for me, so I'd feel included while you got on with your real married life." "We would include you in everything from now on," she said desperately. "I swear, we would make you part of the family. For $183,000, I'm sure you would. But here's the thing, Cassie. I don't want to buy my way into my son's life. I don't want to pay for the privilege of being included in your family. And I sure as hell don't want to fund your lifestyle while being treated like an inconvenience." Danny stopped pacing and stared at me. "So that's it? You're just going to destroy our future because you're mad about one day?" "One day?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Danny, this isn't about one day. This is about who you've become. This is about the fact that you think it's acceptable to exclude your mother from your wedding and then show up here in your tuxedo demanding that I fund your dreams anyway. You're being vindictive and petty." "I'm being honest. For the first time in years, I'm being completely honest about what our relationship actually is." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you don't love me, Danny. You love what I can do for you. You love the idea of having a mother who will write checks and babysit grandchildren and be grateful for whatever attention you're willing to spare. But you don't love me. You're ashamed of me." "That's not true." "Then why wasn't I invited to your wedding?" Silence. "Answer me, Danny. If you love me, if you're proud of me, if I'm really your family, then why wasn't I there today?" More silence. "Because you know what, Danny? I was there today. I was there every day for 35 years. I was there when you needed school supplies and I worked overtime to pay for them. I was there when you wanted to play Little League and I drove you to every practice and game. I was there when you graduated high school and college. I was there when you called me with good news and bad news and everything in between." I stepped closer to him, looking directly into his eyes. "But today, on the day you promised to love and honor another person for the rest of your life, you decided I didn't deserve to witness it. Today, you decided that I wasn't worthy of being called your family." Danny's face had gone pale. "Mom, So I decided to show you exactly what it feels like to be excluded from something important. You excluded me from your wedding, and I excluded you from your inheritance. Fair trade, don't you think? The silence in my apartment was deafening. Danny and Cassie stood frozen, still in their wedding attire, as the full weight of what had happened settled over them. Cassie spoke first, her voice barely above a whisper. Beverly, please. There has to be something we can do. Can't you call the charities? Explain that it was a mistake. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. It wasn't a mistake, Cassie. It was the most deliberate thing I've ever done. But we need that money. Her voice cracked, and I could see the panic in her eyes. We promised my parents we'd pay them back for the wedding. We put a deposit down on the house. Our whole plan. Your plan was to use my money without including me in your life. That plan has changed. Danny suddenly came to life, his face flushed with anger. You vindictive old bitch. How could you do this to us? How could you destroy our future out of spite? The words hit me like a physical slap, but I kept my expression calm. This was who he really was. This was my son, calling his mother a vindictive old bitch because she wouldn't finance his dreams after he excluded her from his wedding. Danny, I want you to listen very carefully to what you just said. Then I want you to think about whether those are words you can ever take back. But he was beyond reason, beyond any semblance of the boy I had raised. I can't take them back, and I don't want to. This is who you really are, isn't it? This is the real Beverly Morrison. A bitter, jealous old woman who can't stand to see her son happy. Happy? You think excluding me from your life makes you happy? Yes. Yes, it does. Because you're exhausting, Mom. You're needy and clingy and embarrassing, and Cass's family thinks you're. He stopped himself, but it was too late. What do Cass's family think I am, Danny? Cassie grabbed his arm. Danny, don't. No, let him finish. What does Cass's family think about me? Danny's jaw was clenched so tight I thought it might break. They think you're white trash. They think you're an uneducated cleaning lady who doesn't belong in our world. They think you'd embarrass us at nice events. There it was. The truth, finally spoken out loud. And what do you think, Danny? I think they're not wrong. The room went completely silent. Even Cassie looked shocked by what he had said. I nodded slowly, feeling something inside me break and rebuild itself stronger. Thank you for your honesty. Now let me be equally honest with you. I walked to my kitchen counter and picked up a manila envelope I had prepared earlier that day. These are copies of all the legal documents I signed today. The charitable donations are irrevocable. The money is gone, and it's never coming back. I handed the envelope to Danny. But that's not all. I've also made some other changes you should know about. Danny opened the envelope with trembling hands, scanning the documents inside. I've changed my will. Everything I own, this apartment's contents, my car, my jewelry, my photos, every single thing I possess, will be donated to charity when I die. You will inherit nothing from me. Nothing. You can't do that, Cassie whispered. I already have. But that's not the best part. I smiled, and I'm sure it wasn't a pleasant expression. I've also written a letter, copies are with my lawyer, my neighbor, and in my safety deposit box, explaining exactly why I made these decisions. It details everything that happened, the engagement party I wasn't invited to, the wedding I was excluded from, and this conversation we just had. Danny's face had gone white. What are you saying? I'm saying that when I die, everyone will know exactly what kind of son you were to me. Everyone will know that you called your mother white trash and a vindictive old bitch. Everyone will know that you excluded me from your wedding and then demanded I pay for your house anyway. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. Your children, if you have any, will know what kind of father they have. Your colleagues will know what kind of man you are. Cass's precious family will know that they raised their daughter to marry someone who treats his mother like garbage. Mom, you can't. I can, and I have. You wanted me out of your life. Danny, congratulations. You got exactly what you wanted. I will never call you again. I will never show up at your events uninvited. I will never embarrass you in front of your important friends. I turned back to face them. But you will also never get another dime from me. You will never use my love for you as a weapon against me. You will never again assume that I'll be there to bail you out of your problems while you treat me like an inconvenience. Cassie was crying now, mascara streaming down her cheeks, her beautiful wedding dress wrinkled and stained. Beverly, please. We can fix this. We can make it right. How, Cassie? How exactly would you make it right? Would you exclude me from your wedding? Would you go back in time and invite me to your engagement party? Would you erase the part where my son called me white trash? She had no answer because there was no answer. Danny crumpled the legal documents in his hands. Fine. Fine. You want to be alone? You want to cut us out of your life? Perfect. But don't come crawling back when you're old and sick and need someone to take care of you. I laughed, and this time there was genuine humor in it. Danny, sweetheart, I'm already old. And if I get sick, I'll hire professionals to take care of me. With the money I would have left you. You're going to die alone. You know that? You're going to die bitter and alone, and nobody is going to care. Maybe. But at least I'll die with my dignity intact. Can you say the same? That was when Cassie finally spoke up, her voice thick with tears and desperation. Please, Beverly. I'm begging you. We're supposed to close on the house next month. My parents loaned us money for the wedding, and we promised to pay them back. Without the inheritance, we'll lose everything. Then I guess you'll have to figure out another way to get the money. Maybe Cass's family, the ones who think I'm white trash, can help you out. Danny threw the crumpled documents on my coffee table. This isn't over. We'll contest the will. We'll prove you're not mentally competent. You'll what, Danny? You'll drag your mother through court to try to steal money she legally donated to charity? You'll claim that the woman who raised you, worked 2 jobs to put you through college, and loved you unconditionally for 35 years is mentally incompetent because she finally stood up for herself. I walked to the door and opened it. Please go. Both of you. You have a honeymoon to get to, and I have a life to rebuild. They didn't move at first, still stunned by how quickly their world had collapsed. I said Gio. Danny and Cassie finally walked toward the door, their wedding finery looking absurdly out of place in my small, humble apartment. As they reached the hallway, Danny turned back one last time. I hope you're happy, Mom. I hope destroying your son's life was worth it. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in months, I saw him clearly. Not as the little boy I had raised and loved, but as the man he had chosen to become. Selfish, entitled, cruel. Someone who would call his mother white trash and then demand she fund his lifestyle. Danny, I didn't destroy your life. I just stopped subsidizing it. There's a difference. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt. Then I walked to my kitchen, poured myself a very large glass of wine, and called Mrs. Patterson. Patty, it's done. How do you feel? I thought about that for a long moment, listening to the silence in my apartment. No more footsteps in the hallway. No more voices arguing about money and houses and family obligations. Free, I said finally. For the first time in years, I feel completely free. And I meant it. 2 weeks later, I was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, I had actually gotten through to Danny. Maybe the shock of losing the inheritance had made him realize what he had thrown away. Maybe he was reflecting on his behavior and feeling some remorse. I was wrong. The phone call came on a Thursday afternoon. I had been in my garden. I'd started spending more time outside, tending to the small plot behind my building, when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer it, but something made me check the caller ID. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. Hello. Mrs. Morrison. The voice was young, female, and very nervous. My name is Jessica Chen. I'm calling from Cassie Williams' real estate office. My blood went cold. I see. I'm calling because, well, this is a bit awkward, but Cassie asked me to contact you about a financial matter. Of course she did. They were too cowardly to call themselves, so they sent an employee to do their dirty work. What kind of financial matter, Jessica? Well, it's about a loan. Cassie mentioned that you might be willing to help them with some temporary financial difficulties they're having. I almost laughed. Almost. Did she now? And what did Cassie tell you about my relationship with her and my son? There was a long pause. She said you were family. That you'd helped them before and might be willing to do it again. Family. 2 weeks ago, Danny had called me white trash and told me I didn't belong in their world. Now I was family again. Jessica, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you married? Yes. Was your mother-in-law invited to your wedding? Another pause, longer this time. Yes. Of course. I see. Well, Jessica, here's the thing. My son got married 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't invited. In fact, I found out about the wedding 3 days before it happened. So when Cassie describes me as family, she's using the term rather loosely. I could hear Jessica shuffling papers on the other end of the line. Mrs. Morrison, I don't really know anything about family situations. I'm just calling about the loan. What kind of loan are we talking about, Jessica? They need $75,000. For a house down payment and some other expenses. $75,000. Not only did they want to replace the inheritance they'd lost, they wanted an extra $30,000 on top of it. And they want this money when? As soon as possible. They're supposed to close on a house next week, and they're short on the down payment. I see. And what are the terms of this loan? Interest rate, repayment schedule, that sort of thing. Well, Cassie mentioned that it might be more of a gift than a loan. You know, family helping family. A gift. They wanted me to give them $75,000 as a gift. 2 weeks after my son called me a vindictive old bitch and told me I was white trash who didn't belong in his world. Jessica, I need you to do me a favor. Yes, I need you to call Cassie right now and give her a message from me. Okay. Tell her that the answer is no. Not just no, but hell no. Tell her that if she needs $75,000, she should ask her family, the real family, the ones who were invited to the wedding. Mrs. Morrison, I don't think I should. Oh, but you should, Jessica. Because here's what Cassie didn't tell you when she sent you to make this call. She didn't tell you that she and my son excluded me from their wedding because they were embarrassed by me. She didn't tell you that my son called me white trash and said I didn't deserve to be part of their lives. Jessica was completely silent now. She sent you to ask for money from a woman they treated like garbage, because they're too cowardly to ask themselves. Does that sound like something you want to be involved in, Jessica? I had no idea. Mrs. Morrison, I'm so sorry. I never would have made this call if I had known. I believe you, sweetheart. You seem like a nice young woman, and you don't deserve to be put in this position. But now you know the truth. What should I tell Cassie? Tell her exactly what I said. Tell her the answer is no, and that if she has any questions about why, she can ask her husband. He'll remember our last conversation very clearly. I hung up the phone and sat in my garden for a long time, thinking about what had just happened. They were broke. The fancy wedding, the country club, the expensive honeymoon they were probably still on. It had all been paid for with borrowed money. Money they couldn't afford to pay back without the inheritance they had counted on receiving. And now they were desperate enough to send a stranger to beg for money from the woman they had humiliated. But I wasn't done learning about their situation. 3 hours later, my phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized, Cass's parents. Beverly, this is Margaret Williams, Cass's mother. Margaret Williams. I had met her exactly once, at a tense dinner 6 months earlier where she had looked at me like I was something she had scraped off her shoe. Hello, Margaret. I think we need to have a conversation. Do we? About what? About this situation between you and the children. About the money they need. The children. Danny was 35 years old, and Cassie was 32, but to Margaret they were children who needed protection from the mean old lady who wouldn't give them money. What about it, Margaret? Beverly, I understand you're upset about the wedding situation. But surely you can see that this is bigger than your hurt feelings. Danny and Cassie have made commitments they can't keep without some help. My hurt feelings. This woman thought that being excluded from my son's wedding was just hurt feelings. Margaret, let me ask you something. If Danny and Cassie needed help with their commitments, why didn't they ask for it before they made those commitments? They thought, we all thought, that you would be more supportive of their future together. Supportive enough to pay for it, you mean? Supportive enough to help family when they need it. But I'm not family, am I, Margaret? According to your daughter, I'm not the right kind of people for your family events. According to my son, I'm white trash who doesn't belong in your world. Silence. So which is it, Margaret? Am I family when you need money, but white trash when you're planning guest lists? Beverly, I think there's been some miscommunication. No, Margaret, there's been very clear communication. Your family made it crystal clear that I don't belong with you. Now you're making it crystal clear that my money does belong with you. Do you see the problem here? I see a stubborn old woman who's punishing two young people for one mistake. Stubborn old woman. There it was, what they really thought of me. One mistake. Margaret, excluding someone's mother from their wedding isn't a mistake. It's a choice. A deliberate, calculated choice that says exactly how little you value that person. But surely you can forgive them. Surely family means more to you than money. I laughed, and I could hear the bitter edge in my own voice. You're absolutely right, Margaret. Family does mean more to me than money. That's why I gave the money away to people who actually need it, instead of saving it for people who treat me like dirt but still expect me to fund their lifestyle. Beverly, please. They're going to lose the house. They're going to have to declare bankruptcy. Is that really what you want? What I want, Margaret, is for my son to love me enough to invite me to his wedding. What I want is to be treated like a human being instead of a walking ATM. What I want is for people to stop calling me family when they need something and white trash when they don't. If you help them now, I promise things will be different. We'll include you more. You'll what, Margaret? You'll let me buy my way into your family? You'll allow me to purchase some affection and respect? How much would that cost, do you think? 75,000? 100? What's the going rate for a mother's place in her son's life? That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. You want me to pay for the privilege of being tolerated by people who are ashamed of me. I took a deep breath, feeling calmer than I had in weeks. Margaret, here's what's going to happen. Your daughter and my son are going to have to figure out their own financial problems. They're going to have to live with the consequences of their choices. They're going to have to explain to their friends and family why they planned a lifestyle they couldn't afford. Beverly. And you, Margaret, are never going to call me again. Because I'm not your family bank, I'm not your emergency fund, and I'm not your children's safety net. I'm just a stubborn old woman who finally learned to say no. I hung up on her too. But the calls didn't stop there. Over the next week, I heard from Cass's sister, Danny's best man, two of his co-workers, and even his old college roommate. They all had the same message: surely I could forgive and forget, surely family was more important than money, surely I didn't want to see Danny and Cassie lose everything over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. That's what they were calling it now. Each call made me more certain that I had done the right thing. These people didn't see me as a person who had been hurt and betrayed. They saw me as a resource that was being unreasonably withheld from people who deserved it more than I did. None of them asked how I was feeling. None of them acknowledged that what had happened to me was wrong. None of them seemed to understand that you can't exclude someone from your life and then demand they finance it. They just wanted the money. All of them. And they were frustrated that I wasn't being reasonable about giving it to them. But the final call, the one that proved everything I had suspected about Danny and Cassie, came on a Friday evening. It was Danny himself. Mom, we need to talk. No, Danny, we don't. We said everything we needed to say 2 weeks ago. I know I said some things I shouldn't have said. I was upset, and I wasn't thinking clearly. You called me white trash, Danny. You called me a vindictive old bitch. You told me that your wife's family was right to think I was embarrassing. Were you not thinking clearly about those things? I was angry. People say things when they're angry. Yes, they do. They say what they really think, but usually don't have the courage to voice out loud. Mom, please. We're going to lose everything. The house, our credit, everything we've worked for. Then you should have thought about that before you planned a life you couldn't afford. We could afford it. We were counting on the inheritance. And there it was. The admission I had been waiting for. So you admit it. You excluded me from your wedding, but you were counting on my money to pay for your life. That money should have been mine anyway. Robert was my stepfather. Robert was your stepfather for 6 years, Danny. I was your mother for 35. Which relationship do you think mattered more to him? This is insane. You're destroying our future because you're mad about one stupid party. One stupid party. Danny, it was your wedding. Your wedding. The most important day of your life, and you decided I didn't deserve to be there. Fine. Fine. You want an apology? I'm sorry. I'm sorry we didn't invite you to the wedding. I'm sorry I said those things. There. Are you happy now? Will you give us the money? I listened to my son who I had loved and sacrificed for and believed in for 35 years, trying to buy forgiveness with the cheapest apology I had ever heard. An apology that wasn't about being sorry for hurting me, but about being sorry that hurting me had cost him money. No, Danny, I won't give you the money. Why not? I apologized. Because you're not sorry you hurt me, sweetheart. You're sorry it had consequences. You're sorry it cost you something. You're sorry you got caught. That's not true. Then prove it. Show me that you understand what you did wrong. Show me that you value our relationship for more than what I can give you financially. How am I supposed to do that? I don't know, Danny. That's for you to figure out. But I can tell you that calling me every few days to ask for money isn't the way to do it. Mom, please. Goodbye, Danny. I hung up and turned off my phone. Then I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony, watching the sunset and thinking about the boy I had raised and the man he had become. Somewhere along the way, I had failed him. Not by being too poor or too uneducated or too embarrassing, but by teaching him that love was conditional. By showing him that if he was good enough, successful enough, charming enough, he could have whatever he wanted. I had never taught him that some things, like respect, like loyalty, like basic human decency, couldn't be bought or bargained for. They had to be earned and maintained through consistent action. I had never taught him that love without respect was just manipulation. But it wasn't too late for him to learn. It wasn't too late for both of us to learn. The question was whether he was willing to do the work. 6 months passed. 6 months of silence from Danny and Cassie, 6 months of peace in my small apartment, 6 months of rebuilding a life that didn't revolve around being needed by people who didn't actually want me. I had started volunteering at the food bank, one of the organizations that had received part of Robert's inheritance. It felt good to see the money being used to feed families who were genuinely struggling, not to fund the lifestyle of people who felt entitled to more than they could afford. I had also started taking a creative writing class at the community college, another recipient of the inheritance money. At 72, I was finally learning to tell stories, to put words together in ways that mattered. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was benefiting from my own donation. But most importantly, I had started to remember who I was before I became Danny's mother. I was Beverly Morrison, a woman who had survived poverty, abandonment, widowhood, and betrayal. A woman who had worked 2 jobs to build a better life. A woman who was stronger than she had given herself credit for. The silence from Danny hurt, but it also clarified things. If my son could go 6 months without speaking to his mother, then our relationship had been more fragile than I had realized. If he could cut me out of his life completely just because I wouldn't finance his dreams, then maybe I was better off without him. But then, on a cold Tuesday morning in January, everything changed. I was sitting in my kitchen, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper, when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, hesitant footsteps that stopped outside my door. No knock. No doorbell. Just footsteps, and then silence. I waited. After a few minutes, I heard the footsteps retreating, going back down the hallway. But something made me open the door anyway. There, on the floor in front of my apartment, was an envelope. My name was written on it in handwriting I recognized but hadn't seen in years. Danny's handwriting, but not the confident script I remembered. This was shakier, more uncertain. I picked up the envelope and went back inside. I poured myself another cup of coffee, sat down at my kitchen table, and opened it. Inside was a letter. 7 pages, handwritten, the kind of letter people write when they need to say things that can't be said in a phone call or a conversation. Asterisk mom, asterisk. Asterisk I've started this letter 100 times over the past 6 months. Every time, I get a few sentences in and realize I don't know how to say what I need to say. I don't know how to apologize for something so big that it changed everything between us. Asterisk. Asterisk but I have to try, because I can't live with what I've done anymore. Asterisk. Asterisk first, I need you to know that Cassie and I lost the house. We lost everything, actually. We had to declare bankruptcy. We're living in a 1-bedroom apartment across town, and we're both working second jobs to pay off the debts from the wedding. Asterisk. Asterisk, I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty or to ask for help. I'm telling you because I need you to understand that losing the money wasn't the worst part of what happened. Losing you was the worst part. Asterisk. Asterisk, it took me losing everything to realize that I had already lost the most important thing, my relationship with my mother. Asterisk. Asterisk, Mom, I know what I said to you that night. I know I called you names that no son should ever call his mother. I know I told you that you were embarrassing, that you didn't belong in our world. I've replayed that conversation in my head every day for 6 months, and every time, I hate myself a little more. Asterisk. Asterisk, but the worst part isn't what I said when I was angry. The worst part is what I did when I was calm. The worst part is that I excluded you from my wedding. I excluded you from the engagement party. I made plans for my future that had no place for you in them. Asterisk. Asterisk, I told myself it was about making Cassie happy, about fitting in with her family, about starting our marriage off on the right foot. But that was all bullshit, and I think I knew it even then. Asterisk. Asterisk, the truth is, I was ashamed of where I came from. I was ashamed of our old apartment with the water stains and the second-hand furniture. I was ashamed of your hands that showed decades of hard work. I was ashamed of the fact that you had to work 2 jobs to raise me while other people inherited their success. Asterisk. Asterisk, but mostly, I was ashamed of myself for feeling that way. Asterisk. Asterisk, Mom, do you remember when I was 16, and Tommy Richardson made fun of you at the school basketball game? He said something about you being the janitor's mother, and I got so angry I punched him in the face. Asterisk. Asterisk, I got suspended for 3 days, but you didn't punish me. You told me you were proud that I had defended you, even though violence was never the answer. You said that family sticks up for family, no matter what. Asterisk. Asterisk, somewhere between that 16-year-old boy and the man I became, I forgot that lesson. I forgot that family sticks up for family. I forgot that the woman who raised me, who sacrificed everything for my future, who loved me unconditionally for 35 years, deserved my loyalty more than anyone else in the world. Asterisk. Asterisk, I chose Cass's family's approval over my own mother's feelings. I chose fitting in over standing up. I chose the easy path over the right path. Asterisk. Asterisk, and then, when you finally stood up for yourself, I called you names and blamed you for ruining my life. Like you were the problem. Like you were the one who had behaved badly. Asterisk. Asterisk, Mom, I ruined my own life. Not by losing your money, but by losing your respect. Not by declaring bankruptcy, but by bankrupting my soul. Asterisk. Asterisk, I know you probably don't believe this, but losing the house was actually a good thing. It forced Cassie and me to have some very hard conversations about who we are and what we value. It forced us to look at how we had treated you and ask ourselves what kind of people we wanted to be. Asterisk. Asterisk, Cassie cried for 3 days when she realized what we had done. She said she never understood what it meant to have a mother-in-law, because her own mother died when she was young. She said she thought she was supposed to compete with you for my attention, not share my love with you. Asterisk. Asterisk, she wants to apologize to you herself, but she's afraid you won't listen. She's afraid she's lost the chance to have a real relationship with you. Asterisk. Asterisk, I'm afraid of the same thing. Asterisk. Asterisk, Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to welcome me back into your life like nothing happened. I certainly don't expect you to give us money or help us with our problems. Asterisk. Asterisk, but I need you to know that I understand now what I threw away. I understand that you weren't trying to control my life when you wanted to be part of my wedding. You were trying to love me the only way you knew how. Asterisk. Asterisk, I understand that when you gave away the inheritance, you weren't being vindictive. You were showing me what it feels like to be excluded from something important. Asterisk. Asterisk, I understand that everything you ever did for me, the long hours, the second jobs, the sacrifices, was because you loved me, not because you expected something in return. Asterisk. Asterisk, and I understand that I am the luckiest man alive to have had you as a mother, even if I was too stupid and selfish to appreciate it. Asterisk. Asterisk, I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I've probably destroyed the most important relationship in my life. But if you're willing, I'd like to try to earn your forgiveness. Not so you'll give us money, not so you'll bail us out of our problems, but so I can maybe someday look at myself in the mirror without feeling ashamed. Asterisk. Asterisk, I want to be the son you raised me to be. I want to be the man who stands up for his mother instead of being embarrassed by her. I want to be worthy of the love you gave me for 35 years. Asterisk. Asterisk I don't know if it's too late for that. But I hope it's not. Asterisk. Asterisk if you're willing to see me, I'll be at Miller's Diner on Sunday at 2 p.m. It's the place where you used to work when I was little, where you'd bring me after school sometimes and let me do homework in the back booth. Asterisk. Asterisk I'll wait there for an hour. If you don't come, I'll understand. I'll know that some things can't be fixed, and that I'll have to live with the consequences of my choices. Asterisk. Asterisk but if you do come, if you're willing to give me one more chance to be your son, then maybe we can start over. Maybe we can build something better than what we had before. Asterisk. Asterisk maybe we can be a real family again. Asterisk. Asterisk I love you, Mom. I should have said that more. I should have shown it better. I should have remembered that you are the most important person in my world, not because of what you can give me, but because of who you are. Asterisk. Asterisk I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Asterisk. Asterisk your son, if you'll still have me. Asterisk. Asterisk Danny. Asterisk. I read that letter 3 times, sitting at my kitchen table with tears streaming down my face. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief. My son, the real Danny, the boy I had raised, was still in there somewhere. It had taken losing everything for him to find himself again, but he had found himself. The letter didn't fix everything. Words on a page couldn't undo 6 months of silence, couldn't erase the pain of being excluded from his wedding, couldn't make me forget being called white trash by my own child. But it was a start. It was an acknowledgement that what had happened was wrong, that I had been hurt, that our relationship mattered more than money or social status or anyone else's approval. It was an apology that actually sounded like an apology, not a transaction. Sunday was 4 days away. 4 days to decide whether I was ready to forgive my son, whether I was willing to risk being hurt again, whether love was stronger than pride. I had raised Danny to be honest, kind, and loyal. For a while, he had forgotten those lessons. But maybe, just maybe, he was ready to remember them. Maybe we both were. I spent those 4 days thinking about what I wanted to say to him, how I wanted this conversation to go. I thought about the conditions I might set, the boundaries I might establish, the ways we could rebuild trust. But mostly, I thought about the 16-year-old boy who had punched Tommy Richardson for insulting his mother. I thought about the child who had fallen asleep to vacuum cleaners and woken up to bacon grease, and had never complained about any of it. I thought about the son I had loved for 35 years, and the man he could still become if I gave him the chance. On Sunday at 1:45 p.m., I walked into Miller's Diner. Danny was already there, sitting in the same back booth where he used to do his homework. He looked older, thinner, worn down by the weight of his mistakes. But when he saw me walking toward him, he smiled, the same smile he'd had as a little boy, and I knew that no matter what happened next, I had made the right choice. Some things are worth fighting for. Some people are worth forgiving. And sometimes, love really is stronger than pride. Hi, Mom. Hi, sweetheart. Let's talk. And for the first time in 6 months, we did. That was 8 months ago. Danny and I have been rebuilding our relationship slowly, carefully, with the understanding that trust, once broken, takes time to repair. He and Cassie did lose the house, did declare bankruptcy, did have to start over from scratch. But they also learned something valuable about what really matters in life. They learned that family isn't something you can take for granted, that love isn't something you can buy, and that some mistakes cost more than money. Cassie eventually called me herself, not through an employee, not through her mother, but directly. She apologized not just for the wedding, but for the way she had treated me from the beginning. She asked if we could start over, if she could learn to be the daughter-in-law I deserved instead of the one who had treated me like an embarrassment. It's been a process. There are still moments when I remember being called white trash, still times when I wonder if they really see me differently or if they're just being nice because they learned there are consequences to being cruel. But there are other moments too. Moments when Danny calls just to check on me, not because he needs something. Moments when Cassie asks for my advice about recipes or gardening or life in general. Moments when I feel like a mother and a mother-in-law instead of a walking ATM. They're renting a small apartment now, driving used cars, working extra jobs to pay off their debts. It's not the life they planned, but it might be a better life than the one they were trying to buy with my money. As for the inheritance money, all $183,000 of it, I have no regrets. The food bank uses it to feed hundreds of families every month. The literacy program has helped dozens of adults learn to read. The scholarship fund has sent 6 kids to college so far, kids who remind me of Danny at that age, full of dreams and potential. Robert would have approved. He always said the best investments were the ones that helped people build better lives. I've learned something important through all of this. You can't love someone into loving you back. You can't sacrifice your way into being valued. You can't buy respect or earn appreciation by giving up pieces of yourself. But you can love yourself enough to set boundaries. You can value yourself enough to demand better treatment. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the people who have taken you for granted will realize what they've lost and decide to do better. Not everyone gets a second chance. Not every family can be rebuilt after betrayal. But some can, if everyone involved is willing to do the hard work of becoming better people. Danny is learning to be the son I raised him to be. Cassie is learning to be part of a family instead of judging it. And I'm learning that being alone is better than being taken for granted, but being genuinely loved, really seen and valued and respected, is worth the risk of trying again. To everyone watching this, everyone who's ever felt invisible in their own family, everyone who's ever been treated like an ATM instead of a person, remember that you have value beyond what you can provide for others. Remember that love without respect isn't love at all. And remember that sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone else's selfishness. Family should lift you up, not tear you down. Love should add to your life, not subtract from it. And if the people in your life can't see your worth, maybe it's time to find people who can. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been in a situation like mine, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from, and have you ever had to choose between being taken for granted and being alone? Sometimes the hardest choice is also the right choice. Sometimes standing up for yourself costs everything. But sometimes, just sometimes, it's worth it. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for letting me remember that I'm more than just someone's mother. I'm Beverly Morrison, and I'm worth more than I was being offered. And so are you.